The night of my sister's engagement party started like any other celebration, full of laughter, chatter, and the low hum of soft music drifting through the room. Guests moved from the buffet to the dance floor, toasting with glasses raised, compliments flying back and forth. Everything looked perfect on the surface. I had spent hours choosing my outfit, making sure I looked polished but not overdone, hoping to blend into the crowd without drawing attention. But inside, I couldn't shake the tension. I knew Michael, my sister's fiancé, and I didn't trust him. Something about his smirk, the way he spoke to people with subtle arrogance, always rubbed me the wrong way. I told myself tonight would be different. I would stay calm, be polite, and watch from a safe distance. I arrived a little late, giving myself a chance to observe the room first. The decorations were beautiful flowers in soft pinks and whites, strings of lights casting a warm glow, tables set neatly with fine china. My sister was radiant, laughing as she hugged friends and family. Her happiness was contagious, and for a brief moment, I let myself enjoy it. But then, across the room, I saw him. Michael. He caught my eye, and I felt that familiar flicker of irritation. He was talking to a group of friends, leaning back confidently, that smirk never leaving his face. I knew he would be the center of attention all night, and I had to remind myself stay calm. When it was time to sit for dinner, I slid into my chair next to my sister. I smiled at her, trying to share a moment of joy, but I couldn't shake the nervous energy coiling in my stomach. Michael came around, greeting everyone with exaggerated charm. His hand brushed mine casually as he passed, and that small, deliberate gesture felt like a warning. I forced myself to laugh at his jokes, nod along to his stories, all while my mind remained sharp, watching, calculating. I wasn't going to let him get the best of me tonight. Then it happened. One moment I was seated, the next I was flying through the air. Michael had yanked my chair out from under me with a flick of his wrist, a grin on his face that was almost too casual. The world tilted violently, my hips slammed against the edge of the table, and my head nearly hit the floor. Pain flared sharply, but humiliation hit harder. Everyone gasped. Some laughed nervously, unsure what to do. My sister's face froze in shock, eyes wide, lips parted. Michael, oblivious or perhaps pleased with the chaos, laughed aloud, confident laugh that cut through the noise. I lay on the floor for a moment, stunned, my mind racing. Humiliation wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. My heart pounded. But it wasn't just the physical pain that stung, it was the betrayal. I had trusted this night would be about family, about joy, about celebration. And in an instant, Michael had stolen that. I could feel the heat of embarrassment creeping up my neck. The chatter around me blurred into white noise as I replayed the moment over and over. Why would he do that? Why at my sister's engagement? It didn't make sense. It had to be intentional. I forced myself to get up, brushing off the shock and pain, pretending I was okay. My sister rushed to me, her voice tight with worry. "Are you hurt?" she asked, reaching for my arm. I smiled weakly, shaking my head, trying to downplay it. "I'm fine," I said, though my hip throbbed. But inside, something had shifted. The anger simmering quietly in me was now a fire. This wasn't just a joke, a prank, or an accident. It was deliberate, and it cut deeper because it happened in front of everyone I cared about. Everyone had seen it. Michael had taken control of the moment, and I had been humiliated in front of my sister, our family, and all her friends. I moved to my seat again, forcing a calm that felt fake even to me. Michael sat across the table, still smiling, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. I could see it clearly now. He thrived on this kind of dominance, on making others feel small to inflate himself. My chest tightened as I tried to keep my emotions in check. I could feel my jaw clench with the urge to confront him, to shout, to make him feel even a fraction of what I felt. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not here. Not in front of my sister. As dinner progressed, I watched him carefully, noting his gestures, the way he interacted with everyone else, how confident he seemed, unbothered by the incident. It was infuriating. Every laugh he received felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I kept my eyes on him, but also on my sister. She seemed blissfully unaware of his subtle cruelty, caught up in the excitement of her engagement. That only fueled my frustration. I wanted to protect her from his arrogance, his disregard for others, but I couldn't interfere directly, not yet. By the time dessert arrived, I had resolved to myself that I would not forget this moment. The embarrassment, the pain, and the anger weren't fleeting. They had planted a seed, a small, dark seed that whispered of payback, of justice. But I also felt a strange mix of caution. I wasn't someone who acted recklessly, and I knew revenge, if pursued too soon or too blindly, could backfire. So, I allowed myself to simmer in the anger quietly, letting it grow in the background like a storm building strength. When the party ended and guests began leaving, I stayed behind, helping. My sister gathered decorations, clean up the tables. Michael lingered nearby, his smile too confident, too assured, unaware that the incident had not been forgotten. My mind raced with possibilities. How could I make him feel what I had felt? How could I reclaim my dignity without causing chaos? Without dragging my sister's happiness into it? The questions buzzed in my head, relentless and demanding answers. Lying in bed, I replayed every detail. The smirk on his face, the laughter, the shock on my sister's face, the gasps of the guests. Anger and humiliation mixed with determination. I understood now that this wasn't just about a chair, or even about a moment of embarrassment. It was about respect, about boundaries, about not letting someone think they could treat me like I didn't matter. And so, quietly, I made a decision. I would not let this go. The betrayal burned brightly in my mind, but it wasn't the destructive, blind kind. It was focused, sharp, and precise. I wouldn't act recklessly. I would wait, observe, plan. I would find a way to make Michael understand, in his own way, that actions have consequences. And somewhere in that plan, I would also reclaim my pride, my dignity, and perhaps protect my sister from further harm. The night had started with celebration and joy, but for me, it ended with a promise, a silent vow that the tables would turn. And when they did, it would be deliberate, undeniable, and unforgettable. After that night, I couldn't shake the image of Michael's smug grin or the way my body had hit the floor. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it, my chair sliding out, the thud of my fall, the collective gasp of the guests. The humiliation was still raw, simmering beneath the surface, but the anger had evolved into something sharper, more focused. I realized this wasn't just a one-time event I could let pass. I needed a way to make him understand the consequences of his actions, to make him feel the weight of what he had done, but without losing control of myself in the process. I started watching him closely. At first, it was casual, observing his mannerisms during family gatherings, listening to his conversations. I noticed patterns in the way he behaved, how he liked attention, how easily he assumed people would laugh along with him. There was arrogance there, yes, but also carelessness. He had blind spots, moments when he was too confident, too sure of himself, and that gave me an edge. I didn't need to humiliate him recklessly. I needed precision. I spent nights planning, letting scenarios play out in my head. Some were petty, others more elaborate, that each one had to feel fair, poetic in its justice. I imagined him standing where I had fallen, experiencing embarrassment in front of people who mattered to him. I imagined subtle exposure of his arrogance, small moments that would chip away at his untouchable confidence. The thrill of it made my pulse race. The fear of acting too soon, or of doing something I might regret, made it even more intoxicating. Yet there was conflict inside me. I wasn't a cruel person, and I didn't want to cross the line into cruelty. Each plan I considered, each idea I drafted in my mind, came with the question, would this hurt anyone else? Would it spiral beyond control? I thought about my sister, her happiness, the family gatherings, the fragile balance of relationships. One wrong move could turn everything into chaos, and I didn't want that. I wasn't looking for revenge for revenge's sake. I wanted to reclaim my dignity, to restore balance, to make a statement without causing unnecessary harm. As the days passed, I noticed how Michael's arrogance bled into other moments. He was careful to appear charming, but he left trails, small mistakes, subtle lapses in judgment, tiny ways his ego made him predictable. I started keeping a mental record, noting the moments when he underestimated people, when he acted too fast, when he assumed no one noticed his arrogance. Each observation was a piece of the puzzle. Each misstep was an opportunity waiting to be seized. I also noticed how he interacted with my sister. He smiled at her, held her hand, whispered sweet words, but I saw the calculated side beneath it. Everything he did seemed measured, rehearsed. And yet, in his arrogance, he sometimes let slip a hint of impatience, a micro-expression of irritation that few would catch. That human flaw, invisible to most, became my map. I didn't just want him embarrassed. I wanted him confronted with the truth of his behavior, in a way he couldn't ignore. The internal struggle was relentless. Every plan I devised felt satisfying. In my mind, yet I could feel the weight of potential consequences pressing down. I imagined myself putting one of my plans into action and watching the fallout. Would I feel triumph, relief, or would I feel regret, knowing I had become the very type of person I despised? I had to remind myself constantly that revenge wasn't about losing who I was. It was about reclaiming control without compromising my values. Even mundane moments became opportunities for strategy. Watching him at family dinners, seeing how he interacted with friends, noting how he handled compliments or criticism, it all fed into the plan. I realized that precision required patience, and patience required self-control. Each moment of observation was a rehearsal, each interaction a test of timing. I learned to detach my emotions from the process, to watch without reacting, to wait for the perfect moment. Sleep became difficult. My mind would replay the fall, the laughter, the smirk. At times, I wondered if I was obsessed, if my fixation on Michael was consuming too much of my life. But then I reminded myself, this wasn't about obsession. It was about preparation. Planning revenge didn't mean I had to act immediately. It meant understanding the landscape, knowing when and how to act, and ensuring that when the moment came, it would be decisive and clean. I also reflected on the moral side constantly. Michael had wronged me. Yes, but I wasn't looking to hurt him physically or ruin his life. I wanted him to feel a mirror of the embarrassment and arrogance he had shown me, to experience it without it being destructive. That line was crucial. Crossing it would make me indistinguishable from him, and I refused to become that. Revenge, in my mind, had to be clever, calculated, and contained. The more I watched him, the more I realized he was predictable, almost formulaic. His confidence, his smirk, his little gestures, they all made him vulnerable in a specific way. I started imagining scenarios that would expose his arrogance without creating real harm. A chair that collapses harmlessly, a subtle slip at the right moment, a small, controlled embarrassment that he couldn't blame anyone else for. Each scenario was tested mentally, over and over, until I felt it was perfect. At the same time, I couldn't ignore the human element. Michael was not evil. He had charm, wit, and a way of making people feel important when he wanted to. That made the plan trickier, because I had to balance timing with subtlety, precision with ethics. The goal wasn't to make him suffer endlessly. The goal was to teach a lesson in a way that left me intact, that restored my pride without destroying him or anyone else. As the engagement festivities continued, I began to play the waiting game. I let him be, pretending I had forgiven or forgotten, while quietly noting every opportunity, every moment of overconfidence. My friends and family saw nothing, thinking I was calm and collected, but beneath the surface, I was building a strategy. It was like setting pieces on a chessboard, moving them slowly into place, preparing for the moment when everything would align. By the end of the week, my mind was sharp, focused. I could recall every detail of the fall, every laugh, every smirk. I had scenarios ready, plans rehearsed, contingencies considered. I knew the moment would come soon, and when it did, I would be ready. But more importantly, I knew I had changed, not in ways that were dangerous, but in ways that gave me clarity. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was preparing. I was in control. The anger, the humiliation, the desire for justice, they were all tools now, sharpened by patience and observation. I had become someone who could act decisively, someone who could confront wrongs without losing herself. Michael's arrogance had given me the perfect opportunity, but I would strike only when the moment was flawless, when the impact would be undeniable yet controlled. And so I waited, every day and night sharpening the plan in my mind, rehearsing the moment when I would reclaim my dignity and make Michael understand that actions, even small ones, had consequences. I didn't know if I would feel triumph, relief, or regret when it finally happened. But I did know one thing: I would not be the victim anymore. I would not fall again without standing back up stronger, smarter, and ready to turn the tables with precision. The day of the second engagement gathering arrived, and my anticipation was electric. I had spent the past week observing, planning, and imagining the moment I would reclaim my dignity. Tonight was my chance not to destroy Michael, but to make him understand the consequences of his arrogance. I had chosen a simple, clever method. A chair, identical to the one he had yanked from under me, rigged to collapse safely when he sat. It was harmless, yet it would mirror exactly what he had done. I rehearsed the moment repeatedly in my mind, imagining every expression, every gasp, every small victory of reclaiming control. The party began like any other. Laughter, greetings, music, the hum of excitement. My sister floated through the room, radiant in her happiness, oblivious to the tension building around her. Michael was, of course, at the center of attention, charming and confident, completely unaware that the tables were about to turn. I felt a mix of adrenaline and calm. My plan was ready. I had to wait for the exact right moment. Timing was everything. One wrong second could ruin everything, and I wasn't about to let that happen. As dinner concluded, I slipped into position. The chair was set, identical, placed subtly so he wouldn't notice a thing. I watched him move through the room, the same smug grin on his face, hands gesturing casually as he laughed with our relatives. My heart pounded, but I reminded myself to breathe, to stay composed. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about precision, about reclaiming dignity without losing myself. I felt a quiet thrill in the control I now held. Michael approached the chair, chatting confidently with someone at the table. He didn't notice the subtle differences, the careful setup, or the small trap beneath his seat. Everything depended on him acting naturally, on him assuming nothing would happen. I held my breath as he lowered himself slowly, his focus elsewhere, his smirk fixed in arrogance. The moment came. He sat. The chair gave way with a soft snap, collapsing under him harmlessly. Michael flailed, the laughter in his voice catching him off guard. Gasps and then laughter rippled through the room, not cruel, but knowing. People leaned in, trying to understand what had happened. He looked up, stunned, eyes wide, momentarily stripped of the confidence he wore like armor. I stepped forward, careful to appear concerned, my expression calm, almost casual. "You okay?" I asked, as though it had been an accident. My voice was steady, but inside, my satisfaction was sharp and clear. For the first time since the original betrayal, I felt in control, a sense of balance restored. Michael's pride had been shaken, but no one was hurt. It was justice, subtle but undeniable. He recovered quickly, brushing off embarrassment with an awkward laugh, but I saw the flicker of realization in his eyes. He understood, even if only subconsciously, that the tables had turned. The arrogance, the control, the casual cruelty he had felt its mirror. And in that moment, I understood something critical. Revenge was not about causing destruction or harm. It was about reclaiming power, dignity and self-respect. My sister rushed to him, concern evident, and helped him to his feet. "Are you hurt?" she asked. Michael smiled sheepishly, rubbing the back of his neck. The moment was tense, but it was also a lesson delivered quietly, without spectacle. I realized that my plan had worked perfectly, not in humiliation for its own sake, but in showing him that actions have consequences. I didn't need to yell, embarrass him publicly, or escalate the situation. Precision had done more than brute force ever could. As the evening progressed, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. Michael's confidence had been tempered, not destroyed. I watched him navigate the rest of the party with more caution, more humility. The satisfaction I felt wasn't loud or vindictive, it was subtle, a quiet reminder that arrogance could meet its match in patience and strategy. I had achieved what I wanted, a balance restored, my dignity intact, and a lesson learned by someone who had underestimated me. In the quiet moments after the guests left, I reflected on what had happened. The fall, the plan, the execution, it was all more than just a game of revenge. It had been a test of patience, control, and moral judgment. I had felt the fire of anger, the thrill of planning, and the temptation to act recklessly. But the restraint I exercised was the real victory. I didn't need to destroy him to prove a point. I didn't need to stoop to cruelty. And in that, I found a deeper satisfaction than I ever could have imagined. Michael eventually approached me, a small smile on his face, the arrogance tempered, at least slightly. "I guess I underestimated you," he admitted, a hint of genuine acknowledgement in his voice. I nodded, accepting it silently. No words of retaliation, no boasts, just the quiet understanding that I had taken control without losing myself. That was the real power of revenge, I realized. Not in hurting others, but in standing up for oneself with intelligence and integrity. Later, alone in my room, I replayed the night in my mind, not with anger, but with clarity. The incident had started with pain and humiliation, but it had ended with balance and understanding. I had turned a moment of betrayal into a lesson, both for Michael and for myself. I felt a strange mix of relief and pride. Relief that the plan had worked, pride that I had remained true to myself, controlled my emotions, and executed something with precision and ethics. In the end, I realized revenge was never about triumph over someone else. It was about reclaiming your sense of self, your dignity, your voice in a world where others try to silence or diminish you. Michael's arrogance had given me an opportunity, but the choice to act wisely had been mine. That choice, more than any plan or prank, was the real victory. I lay back that night, calm for the first time in days. I didn't feel triumphant in a shallow sense, but powerful in a quiet, enduring way. Revenge had tempted me with bitterness, but restraint had given me more than any act of cruelty ever could. The lesson was clear. Vengeance could be satisfying, but only when tempered by morality, foresight, and control. Anything else would have been just another fall, another humiliation, another loss. The night ended with a deep sense of closure. I had faced the betrayal, planned my response, and executed it with precision. I had not allowed anger to control me, nor had I allowed humiliation to define me. I had reclaimed my dignity, and in doing so I had learned something profound. Revenge, when handled wisely, is less about hurting someone else, and more about proving to yourself that you can rise above, even when others try to push you down.